Hiya, I'm Tom Houghton, Northwest Business Editor for the Liverpool Echo and Business Live.
And I'm Dan Davies. I'm the Chief Exec of Rockpoint Leisure.
So we're here today. I'm speaking to Dan to talk about regeneration in New Brighton, the Rockpoint Leisure project, an update on where we are and where we sort of go from here. Habibi across the road, all of the new venues open and doing well, but what have been the main challenges of the last 3 years? I'm guessing the pandemic's going to be one of them.
Brexit was, we didn't know we were in or out of Europe at that time, so that was already a bit of a risk. And that after it started, within a few weeks of buying what is now Oakland, the gallery, that was a closed solicitor's office. The pub was closed for James Addison, that was all boarded up, and a big steel boards on. Habibi was boarded up, that was a failed restaurant, been a couple of restaurants. 3 banks all boarded up. All of these, I just thought some of them are beautiful buildings, but also it's important if you're going to try and change something round, a certain anchor sites that you think they've got to be open, you can't have them closed because, it doesn't look good if there's places just boarded up. And also it's a complete, means there's no jobs, there's no opportunities. I live just up the road, my next door neighbour, Roy, founded Revolution Vodka Bars in the same year that I founded CPL in 1991. And he came flying down and said, what the hell are you doing? You're going to waste all, you're going to literally spend all the money that you've worked hard for. Why are you doing it? And I said, well, why haven't you done it? Why haven't you opened a Revolution down here? And he said, I wanted to. We looked a number of times, but the demographic report doesn't stack up. So my response was, well, 1, that doesn't sound like a revolution, and 2, you didn't know what a demographic report was in 1991, that did I. And if you did, and on that basis, you wouldn't have started what ended up being a £100 million FTSE listed company. I think we're wrong. I think the demographic reports are done generally by people who are looking, private equity, hedge funds, and they're looking when they're rolling out a new brand or an existing brand, and they want to see where they can put them. And what they look at is with 15,000 people who live here, generally blue collar, working people, and that this same demographic report is the one that gives us a Hungry Horse, not a Miller and Carter, a Burger King, not a Nando's, a Travelodge, not a Hilton. And that I think we're wrong. I think a lot of these people who make these decisions for us never even visit the places that they're making those decisions about. A lot of them, London, the north to them is Islington, and they're literally sitting and looking at a spreadsheet and deciding where to roll these out. So we think we have a choice here, but a lot of the time we don't have a choice. We have a choice of what choice they give us. So as I just said to him, I think you're wrong, and that I'm not planning on just opening one place here because I don't think that would necessarily work. I think it would be a stopgap, it would work for a while. But ultimately, if everything else around is run down, I actually think that it's important to look at the whole area and come up with a plan. And having, obviously got the call for evidence at the House of Lords report, I had to do a lot of thinking about, well, okay, what is wrong with seaside towns? Why have they gone down generally? Why are the figures worse than a lot of other, inland towns? So, we travelled a lot around different seaside towns in the UK. We looked at what had happened there, and when I gave evidence, we put together an argument for regeneration of places like New Brighton, and as we came out the number 1 potential model. Up until 3 months before the end of the 2-year report, they hadn't found one place that they would use as an example, so they made one up called Seaminster, and then we came in and added the evidence for it, and they put New Brighton as the top model. And the irony is that New Brighton came out number 1, and this is the only council in the country with a seaside town that never even bothered responding to the House of Lords Select Committee.
So just to knuckle down on the pandemic then.
The pandemic. The pandemic hasn't been exactly a walk in the park. I think the whole world was affected by it, has been, and it was the unknown. When we first locked down, we thought it was going to be a few weeks, and it ended up about 3.5 months. And when we were in the middle of a load of regeneration work, so we were in the middle of building sites and everything, and then as it dragged on, you thought, how the hell do you plan for this? Because we didn't know we were going to run out of money. Building supplies were a bit, we were getting pinched. When you say pinch, I mean the pinch points, that there wasn't enough, things like plasterboards, national shortage of things. So the first one came and went. We opened up a Knees Out to Help Out scheme, which was actually a successful scheme, but because the brunt of the rising COVID cases got blamed on the hospitality sector, and you can ride a coach and horses through these sort of stats, it was they failed to mention care homes, they failed to mention the fact that you could be socially distanced outside a pub, but then as soon as you go on a tube or a bus or and often in supermarkets and places, there wasn't any. And the next lockdown came, and that's when we did the name change of the pub. And that was really out of anger, because when you get all your staff together from 3 venues trading, and say, look guys, we're going to be locked down again. I don't know when it's going to open. There's a lot of upset people who are worried, who've got jobs. We were thinking, what the hell? How long is it going to last this time? The likes of the sun was out, so we were thinking, seaside towns are seasonal, and that we had spent a lot of money on an outside area for BB, and for a while it could only be outside, and it was a case of thinking, it was a stressful time, very stressful. And also seeing the team, the staff, fit and thinking, feeling for them. There's, we decided to change the name, which got a fair amount of traction and a bit of grief from government. But
and your mum as well, did I say?
Yeah, my mum. It's quite embarrassing. Because my mum apparently didn't know what a bell end was, so when she got told by her friends, it was an interesting conversation between me and her. As well as saying, your dad's not happy with it. That's what I'm really like. I think it's fine. Don't put it onto him. What's important is this community, like a lot of communities, are very, very strong. But they just had the life kicked out of them over decades and decades of underinvestment. And in a lot of cases, I think it's an actual strategic write-off of the place. I think they're, looking at the decisions, why didn't they go to the House of Lords Select Committee? Why have they, bypassed in favour of Lisgar, Birkenhead? Birkenhead's having a huge regeneration. My old office was there, and I'm all for regenerating these places, but you can just take a fraction of the money and put it into New Brighton, and actually, regenerate this. Because if you take away all the businesses and the independents and just dump housing here everywhere, well then, look at places like Leeso. Leeso's got about 13,500 people. We've got 15,000 people. Now in Leeso, there is virtually, no jobs. So if you live there, you've got to go and work somewhere else. You can't really socialise there because there's no pubs, no restaurants. It's just, convenience store and chippy and things like that. So after a certain time, now, fast forward, a few years, that is not good urban planning, and it's not good for communities. And you find that, planning and licensing don't really communicate with each other. And I think a lot of the time it's quick fix solutions, to mend, the fact that last out of 453 councils for housing, and they just do these things. They don't live there most of the time, the people who make these decisions. And that also what they are leaving is a time bomb, if you like, in the future, because you're shattering people's hopes, dreams, opportunities. You know, people like me, a lot of people like me in the early 90s wanted to get out of New Brighton. A lot of people left and went down to work, you know, in other places, London and places, because there wasn't much opportunity, there wasn't much hope. So that's the sort of situation we were in when we started. It was below the sort of like a base average that you'd need.
Overall then, what's sort of the ultimate vision for New Brighton? You've mentioned things like the open air baths and piers and so on. Were you looking to have something like that?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think there's, for this area, I mean, I think there's a number of distinct neighbourhoods in New Brighton. I think we've got the promenade, which is always going to be dominated by, you know, some big chains, as well as, you know, some decent independents. And I think that's important. We're not going to knock down the baths. There's the Morrison's, so we're stuck with Morrison's, but I think a Lido would be good, and I think we should have one, considering we used to have two. I think a pier would be good. These are going to be sort of like second phase if we can, you know, if we can get them off the ground. I think there needs to be things, when you get rid of the prime reason that New Brighton was once the third largest seaside town in the UK, it's now the 66. That's because there's nothing to do. You know, there's no reason for people to spend more dwell time here or even visit. So street art was a big pillar, and I thought actually we could create the biggest free open air street art gallery in the country. And that was one of our aims, because that was, you know, A, brought people to visit, B, brightened up areas and walls that were, you know, you just passed every day. You walked up Hope Street, and the back of the Perch Rock pub was just this filthy sort of wall, and we painted Martin Luther King en masse with the words from U2's Pride in the Name of Love. You know, one of the verses from that, and that was, you know, people walked up that every day, and you know, now it's a wall that you actually take in, you look at, and the post office, which Insa's done, that's his biggest mural in the UK, and he's just done his show here. He picked in our gallery Oakland, and Oakland was another one. We wanted to bring a London style, New York style gallery, that quality, to the high street in New Brighton, because art often is seen as quite elitist, and people don't go in galleries, you know, a lot of the time, because A, they tend to be in city centres, and B, they get a bit intimidated by going in. So we wanted to have sort of street art and give a platform for not only local artists, but bring in some of the best in the world. And you know, you get the odd criticism saying, why don't you only use local artists? And my response to that is, if Glastonbury only used bands from Somerset, we wouldn't be talking about it now. You know, and for some of the artists to have the opportunity to work with, you know, the people like Dot Master, who's done Cannes and does Glastonbury's, and Ben Hine, who's done, you know, he did the rat on the wall in London with in Liverpool with Banksy, and he did Berlin Zoo and started pictures on walls with him. And a lot, you know, the mural of the guy from the lifeboats, that was done by an Australian artist. Nerome, a French artist, has come up and done another piece. So it's a mixture of different things, including, you know, sort of abstract stuff as well as portraits, and a pretty wide mix. And that is, art should be about a discussion point, it should, but it's, you know, and also people won't like everything, but I think there's a fair eclectic mix of art, and we've strategically put them so when you do an art tour, you can spend a bit of time, but you actually go round, and they're next to, on the side of lots of little businesses. There's, you know, they could stop and say, well, I'm going to have a coffee here, I'm going to have a pint there, I'm going to have something to eat here, I'm going to buy some you know, merchandise or apparel or whatever from the sort of shops that we're moving around. And the ultimate sort of idea for this sort of phase is to extend the art, but extend it up Seabank Road, because that's another really sort of fiercely independent road into New Brighton, up towards the station, which has often been forgotten. Has got some really good little independent businesses and coffee shops, and really fill that out. Because I think that helps the sort of footfall, and with footfall, businesses that were teetering on the edge suddenly become more sustainable, and also it allows them to grow.
Something you mentioned the other day about trying to prevent big corporates such as your Costas, Starbucks, KFCs from coming into New Brighton. Is that something that we can talk about? And
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I don't get me wrong, I dealt with a lot of brands, so a lot of these companies, we train for, and that they're owned by normally private equity vehicles that every 5 years it's a double your money, and you sell on to another one. And there's some very good ones, but there's a lot of ones that, whoever you're in business with, in 5 years you're in business with another one. Now, this is actually quite a difficult thing to do, and it's something that we've been doing a lot of thinking about, because in effect, you normally have companies that go and buy up places for brands, and then they do a lease on it, or that they go out and find, and you only need a few places on this road to turn into a Costa, a Tesco Express, or one of the brands that they think are going to be suitable here. And I think you then undermine the model. So this is not a monopoly, and that but what it is, and the reason we're doing it, we don't want to operate all the places, but we want to make sure that they don't, you don't suddenly get a load of the sort of brands that just make it like any other high street. The biggest problem I see is that in high streets is that if you were blindfolded and parachuted into 90% of them in the UK, and your blindfold was taken off, you literally wouldn't know where you were. Because if you just look down traditional high street, you've got exactly the same sort of offers. Fast forward to sort of post-pandemic, and we've seen a lot of them go, and there is going to have to be a discussion, particularly in a lot of sort of bigger towns and cities, about what that's replaced with. When I was 16, I worked in Halfords in Liskeard, and I actually watched the Cherry Tree Centre get built. So now, in Birkenhead, opposite our offices, you'd see buildings get built, knocked down, built. We won't knock anything down unless it was absolutely essential. We want to regenerate it and refurbish. Now that costs more money, but I think you then have buildings that will be standing a damn sight longer than the crap that gets thrown up now, breeze block sort of rubbish that they throw up now. And also, the best will in the world, if you take a space in a purpose-built sort of like leisure park, it's a glass and breeze block box, and you can do what you want with it inside, but it doesn't take away from the fact it's a black and it's a breeze block box. If you go in places like this, like Rockpoint Records, you'll see the quirky sort of spaces, and that you can bring, you've got to commercialise it in the sense that, in Rockpoint Records, literally every broom cupboard and everything is being used for something, and that's the sort of thing we want to do. And we also, will beg, steal, borrow, anything that we can get from refurb, the sort of yards and things, the lights that we get, get things out of skips and everything. And what we're doing in the supermarket is using all the old shelving and things to make the bar and to make different sort of retail spots for people. And I think that we live in a world now where everything's throwaway. We don't give a shit about the environment, and actually people do now sort of care about where things come from, and do you have to throw stuff away? Can it be fixed? Can it be used for something else? And another easy one for the environment is something that we did a few weeks ago, and we're going to continue to do. I was in the downpours that happened. I was looking at the roofs of the different places we've got, and thought how much water comes off those roofs. And we decided, let's go and get some water butts, and we've installed 4 up to now. I'm going to probably install about 30 in total, along the road. We've got to be careful we don't obstruct like wheelchairs and prams, but where we can, we're going to put water butts on as many buildings as we can, so we harvest, and our target is 1 million gallons of rainwater a year to feed the plants outside, fill dog bowls, to whatever we need it for, but it saves it getting taken out the tap. So